Every year, it's the same thing, right? February 14th rolls around with a flood of red roses, heart-shaped everything, and sweet, sentimental cards. It's the one day we've all agreed is about love. But what if I told you that underneath all that sweetness lies a story of marketing genius, bitter rivalries, and rituals so dark they've been almost completely forgotten?
See, the holiday we all celebrate today is, well, it's kind of a modern invention, one that's been carefully built over centuries. And its real origins? They're a wild cocktail of commerce, cruelty, and just plain confusion. So today, we're counting down the top 10 hidden facts about Valentine's Day. Let's get into it.
We're going to start our journey right where the modern holiday really began, not with some ancient saint, but with some very smart business people who saw a golden opportunity to package and sell in emotion.
Kicking off our countdown at number 10 is a treat we all know and love, but as you're about to find out, its origins have nothing to do with romance and everything to do with business.
That's right, way back in 1861, Richard Cadbury, yeah, that Cadbury, had a genius idea. He'd figured out a new way to make more cocoa butter, which let him create all these new eating chocolates. Now, to sell them, he designed the very first heart-shaped box, specifically for Valentine's Day. But here's the kicker. The box itself was the real prize. It was so ornate and beautiful that people were meant to keep it, to use it as a little treasure box for love letters long after the chocolates were gone. Pure marketing genius.
All right, let's move on to number 9, and the woman who single-handedly turned paper and lace into an absolute empire. You know, before the 1840s, Valentines in America were pretty simple, mostly just handwritten notes. But that all changed thanks to a woman named Esther Howland. After she graduated from college in 1847, she saw this fancy, elaborate Valentine from England and thought, hey, I can do that, but better. So she set up a whole assembly line in her house and started churning out these incredibly intricate cards with all the lace and ribbons. She's the one we can thank for mass-producing commercial Valentines in America, turning a quiet little tradition into a massive industry.
Now, at number 8, we're going to see how a day that's supposed to be all about love can also stir up some serious controversy. So, while it's a huge deal in the West, Valentine's Day is seen very differently in other parts of the world. In fact, several countries have either banned or discouraged it because it clashes with Islamic teachings. In Malaysia, religious authorities have been issuing rulings against it since 2005. Pakistan's High Court actually banned all media coverage of the holiday in 2018. And for years in Saudi Arabia, you couldn't even buy red roses around this time of year. While some of those rules have relaxed a bit, it just goes to show you that this supposedly universal day of love isn't so universal after all.
Okay, for number 7, we're peeling back another layer of history to find the very first Valentine. And let me tell you, it wasn't written in a place of love. It was written in a place of pure despair.
Get this. The oldest Valentine's message we have dates all the way back to 1415. But forget a candle at dinner. The guy who wrote it, Charles, Duke of Orleans, was a prisoner in the Tower of London. He'd been captured at the Battle of Agincourt and ended up spending over 20 years locked up. And during that time, he wrote this poem to his wife that starts with the line, "I am already weary of love." It's this beautiful, sad piece of writing, and it's the first real link we have between St. Valentine's Day and a personal, romantic message.
All right, so we've covered the business of love. But now, the story takes a much, much darker turn. Because for every sweet Valentine that was sent, there was an evil twin, one born out of pure spite.
Coming in hot at number 6, say hello to the original form of hate mail.
We tend to think of the Victorians as all prim and proper, right? Well, they invented something called the Vinegar Valentine. These were cheap, anonymous cards people sent to insult someone they couldn't stand. Instead of hearts and flowers, they had these hideous caricatures and nasty poems making fun of how the person looked or their job or just their personality. This was the dark, nasty underbelly of the whole Valentine's craze.
I mean, listen to that. That's an actual poem from a Vinegar Valentine sent to an unpleasant saleswoman. They were incredibly personal and just brutal. It was a way to deliver a social slap in the face from the safety of being anonymous. And the worst part? Before prepaid postage, the poor person receiving the card often had to pay the mailman to get their own insult. Can you imagine?
So let's move to number 5, because this is where we see that these weren't just cruel jokes. Sometimes they had deadly consequences.
No, I'm not exaggerating. In 1885, a man named William Chance was arrested for the attempted murder of his estranged wife. The reason?
According to the newspapers at the time, she had sent him an offensive Valentine. He shot her in the neck. So, yeah, these cards weren't just paper and ink. They could tap into some very real anger and push people right over the edge.
At number 4, we see how all of this personal nastiness started bleeding into the biggest political fights of the era.
It didn't take long for Vinegar Valentines to become a political weapon. During the American Civil War, you could send a card to a Southern secessionist calling them a two-faced villain. And later on, as the women's suffrage movement started gaining steam, opponents used these cards to attack activists. They would have these ugly drawings of suffragists as bad wives with messages like, "I don't want a preaching suffragette." It was literally a weapon in the culture wars of the 19th and early 20th centuries.
We're in the top 3 now. And at number 3, we have to talk about the man at the center of it all. Because the truth is, we don't really have a clue who he was.
This might be the holiday's biggest secret of all. History can't even agree on who St. Valentine actually was. The Catholic Church officially recognizes at least 2 different guys named Valentine who were martyred on February 14th. One was a priest in Rome, the other was a bishop somewhere else. And their stories are full of all these legends, like one of them healed a blind girl or secretly married soldiers against the emperor's orders, but the stories are contradictory and were written hundreds of years after they died. The historical record is so messy that in 1969 the church basically removed his feast day from the main calendar.
And now, we've arrived, the final reveal. To find the ultimate secret of Valentine's Day, we have to dig deeper than ever before. Past the Victorians, past the Middle Ages, past the saints themselves, all the way back to a time of pagan gods and terrifying public rituals.
Our number 2 fact is that the holiday we know as Valentine's Day was almost certainly plopped onto the calendar to replace a much older, much wilder festival, one that took place in mid-February and was, believe me, anything but romantic.
And the number 1 hidden fact about Valentine's Day is that its deepest, darkest roots lie in a violent, bizarre Roman festival of fertility.
On February 15th, the ancient Romans celebrated a festival called Lupercalia. It started with priests sacrificing goats. Then, after a big feast, the priests would cut strips of bloody hide from the dead animals, run naked through the city, and whip women with them. Seriously. The belief was that this wild, violent act would actually make the women more fertile and help with childbirth. The whole thing was so out of control that Pope Gelasius I finally banned it at the end of the 5th century.
So, when you lay it all out, the holiday's journey is just bizarre. It twisted from the brutal fertility rites of Lupercalia to a lonely poem written in a prison, to a Victorian marketing explosion that gave us both love letters and hate mail, and finally, to the global, commercialized, and pretty controversial holiday we have today.
It's really a story of transformation, isn't it? A day that might have started with bloody whips now ends with boxes of chocolate. A saint nobody can quite identify has become the face of an emotion everyone feels. It really forces you to ask, when we celebrate love on February 14th, what tradition are we really carrying on? As you now know, the answer is far more complicated and a whole lot darker than you ever imagined.